because of guests like the one that I've got here coming onto the ice and always jumping the boards, right? You never want to just open the door. You got to jump the boards. That's a big thing here. And a guy who jumps the boards is Alex Daugherty. He never jumps the shark. He writes for ontheforecheck.com. And if you want to follow the Nashville Predators, that's where you need to go, ontheforecheck.com. The Predators are the hottest team in hockey. 15 points in a row. What can we say here? It's just, been a really incredible run. They've become the top team in the Western Conference. And remember, last year, they were an 8 seed going all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. Well, now, possibly a 1 seed doing it? Let's think about that. Anyway, Alex Daugherty on the forecheck.com. I know most recent game, a day ago, a shutout against the Sabres. Pekka Rinne, is throwing more shutouts, I think, than Grover Cleveland Alexander did in 1916. You have to understand, I'm an old-time baseball fan. So there you go. That's the reference of the day. He also now is one of only, he's won 40 games in 3 different seasons. Where do you think Rinne really holds up as an all-time goalie in the NHL?
Well, actually, it's interesting you bring that up because someone pointed out the other day that Pekka Rinne is one of 7 goalies to ever have at least 4 seasons with 40 wins.
Mm-hmm.
The only goalie with more seasons than 4 is Marky Billson, who's obviously one of the all-time greats, if not the all-time great. So. Yeah, he's been absolutely huge for the team. 8 shutouts. He leads the way in Vezina Trophy conversation. I think there's really no way he doesn't win it. If he has a few bad games to finish the year, maybe, but he's done enough to prove it, to take the top trophy for best goalie in the league. And it's been all Pekka Rinne for the Predators all year. I mean, he's been the most consistent player for the team. He's been their biggest asset whenever they've had other things not go well. He's the biggest part of why they're number 1 in the league right now. And I think Pekka Rinne is definitely by far the MVP of the team, and maybe even you can make the argument the MVP of the league.
It's a kind of an interesting thing. I know that, Evgeny Malkin with the Penguins, because he's been so hot after the year turn since January, a lot of people are talking him up and saying, boy, there's a guy under Sidney Crosby's shadow and all that, but certainly the Predators right now with a better record and the 40 victories, there's no way that Rinne is not going to the bank in Toronto after it's all done. You would agree with me there, would you not? The Hall of Fame, the bank in Toronto. There you go. Yeah.
Right. The Hall of Fame. I don't know. I mean, that it's tough to make the Hall of Fame as a goalie. I think he's going to have to win at least 1 Stanley Cup. I mean, if you're a goalie, you got
good
hardware to do it. You can't just be a sort of collect a bunch of wins over a long career and get in there. But it could happen for sure. You mentioned Malkin. I think Malkin has a decent chance, but another guy in the Central Division, Nathan MacKinnon, is probably a lock to win the Hart Trophy now. I think it's between probably Malkin or Nathan MacKinnon or Pekka Rinne or possibly someone else to sneak in there and win that MVP. So it's kind of up in the air. There's a lot of players that could take that top honors for MVP of the league.
By the way, we mentioned that Rinne, and by the way, if you weren't understanding this, I guess I should point out to a Tri-Cities audience, I don't know if I threw you on this, but the bank in Toronto, the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto, it's where, by the way, the Stanley Cup's old rings are kept in an old bank vault. I don't know if you're aware of this, but yes, the Hall of Fame is in an old bank in Toronto that has been refurbished, and actually, it's kind of fun. You can either go, it's not only part of a bank, but the bank has been built into a shopping mall, and you literally, it's like going to the mall and like the openness of a mall store, you can walk into the Hockey Hall of Fame. It's a great environment, and then you walk up these stairs, and there you're into the old bank, and you see the old Stanley Cup, and you learn stories about We're talking about the Vezina Trophy. It's named after an old goalie named George Vezina, who played 15 straight years without missing a game until in the middle of a game, after 2 periods, he keeled over with the tuberculosis that killed him. Were you aware of that?
And he wasn't even supposed to be a goalie. When he first came in, he was a backup, and they just didn't have anybody else to play goalie. And I believe he just got in net, and then all of a sudden started playing well. I think he was like maybe a forward or something when he first started, and then they were like, you know what? Why don't we keep you in?
Yeah, it's right there. I just love the longevity. I mean, there's nothing better to say to whiny kids or something like that. George Vezina did not miss a game for 15 years until he keeled over with the tuberculosis that killed him. He wasn't even supposed to play goalie, so I don't want to hear your whining. That's a pretty decent argument right there, in my opinion. But no, I just because Renee has been the talk of the team here this past week. I've got 5 of the other goalies who won 40 or more games in 3 years. Martin Brodeur, from the old days, Terry Sawchuk, Braden Holtby, still active, Evgeny Novakov, and of course the great Jacques Plante. So there you go. Those are 5 of them. I couldn't find the 6th. Do you know the other one is?
I don't know off the top of my head. And I think that the thing is with the Hockey Hall of Fame with goalies, I really think he's one of, I think, 35 goalies that have achieved 300 wins. I mean, there's a lot of goalies that have 300 wins that aren't even close to the Hall of Fame. I mean, it's really about honestly, I think it's about cups more than anything. I mean, if you look at the goalies in the Hall of Fame, I don't know all of them or anything, but I would be willing to bet that most of them have at least a couple of Stanley Cups. I know that obviously Martin Brodeur had 3, Patrick Wall had a couple. There's no way you can get in that Hockey Hall of Fame without winning that. And so this is the best chance the Rene's ever had to get one. So this is obviously step 1. Well,
I will tell you, one goalie that isn't in with 300 victories was actually the first pro athlete I ever spoke to in a locker room. It was Tom Barrasso. And he actually was very nice to me, and I know he had a reputation for not being nice to the media, and I sometimes wonder if that didn't speak of the media as much as it did Barrasso or so. But and nevertheless, that's a guy. And here's a guy who won a couple of Stanley Cups with the Penguins. Was kind of, when he first came up, looked at as being possibly the greatest American goalie ever. And still has not been in the Hall of Fame yet. So, I guess, it's right there. All right, so I'm doing that, Tennessee thing of giving a little bit too much praise maybe to Rene before I punch his ticket for the bank in Toronto. But one guy who's got his ticket punched for Nashville pretty soon, and we've talked about him, is the Finnish star, Eeli Tolvanen, who, of course, had a big Olympics for Finland. But you're telling me his KHL team is about ready to their playoff season to end, and he could be joining the Predators any time now? What do you know about that?
Yeah, so they're down 3-1 in the series against CSKA Moscow, who is a very good team, and I think they're at home tonight. I think it's not looking good for his Jokerit team to win that game. So if it does end tonight, the report out of the camp, Tolvanen's camp, is that he's already signed his ELC, and he's already taken care of all of his visa immigration papers, so that as soon as their team ends their season, which could be tonight, he will be on a plane back to Nashville. So we could see Eeli Tolvanen as early as next week.
Well, now, where does he play? Because you've been writing all about the depth of the Predators this year. Mike Fisher rejoining him, what have you. But where do you foresee him playing?
I don't think that you need him in a really important role. He just needs to be in a comfortable situation. I would love to see him play with a guy like Mike Fisher or maybe Nick Bonino, someone who's defensively sound but who can still pass well and who can get him up, acquainted with the speed of the game. I think if you stick him on a top line with some of the more skilled players, he might try to do too much. He might try to overcorrect for the skill that they have. And I think he needs to play with a guy like. Honestly, I think if you play him with a guy like Mike Fisher, he's going to have a lot of success because
I would see that too.
Well, and he can pass well to him in the corner. So I think that would be the best option.
And a veteran with the, raw rookie. I like that matchup. Yeah, I mean, let's bring that one on right there. That's now I will tell you the 15-point streak. I remember following not only the Pittsburgh Penguins in '93 winning 17 in a row, but the Islanders winning 15 in a row in the early '80s. I remember both those streaks very well, which I know might date me, but nevertheless, I'm not. But okay, here's what I'm getting to. Tomorrow, Nashville hosts, speaking of the bank in Toronto, the Maple Leafs. On Saturday, they travel to Minnesota. Then they have to go to Winnipeg, come back to Nashville against the Minnesota Wild on Tuesday. If you would say a game you think the toughest game coming up, the Lightning on April Fool's Day, the Preds will be down in Tampa, but what would you say is the real game that the streak has the biggest danger of ending at that time?
I think it might be tomorrow with Toronto.
Okay.
I mean, Toronto has a lot of really dangerous weapons, and they possibly will be getting Austin Matthews back. If they get Austin Matthews back, who is just an elite player in the NHL right now, that could be a tough one. But, all these games are tough. I mean, Minnesota has come on straight. They're a playoff. Come on lately. They're a playoff team. Winnipeg obviously is. The Sharks are in the playoffs, but not as solid. And, like you mentioned, going to Tampa Bay is not going to be easy either. I don't think that they're not gonna finish the season on some sort of crazy win streak where they get points in all their final games. They're gonna lose at some point. Wouldn't be shocked if it's Toronto, but if it's not Toronto, probably Saturday at Minnesota. I think that's a tough place to play. The Wild have a lot to play for still. So.
Yeah, you mentioned crazy points. I think I remember the Islanders in '81. I want to say when they were winning 4 straight cups or so back then, they had an incredible streak going in, and they were just going to be unstoppable. I mean, it was, the Island. This was one of the great teams ever. I mean, Bossy and Smith and all those guys. You weren't going to stop them. By the time they were throwing out the Vancouver Canucks, who, were sort of a Cinderella. They were sort of I don't even give them the credit of being the Predators of that era. You knew that the Islanders were going to sweep and all that, but that was, that was a team. But yeah, just showing like the '81 Islanders, maybe the Predators come in like this on a real hot streak going into the playoffs. I still, though, like I said, I remember the real winning streak, this point streak. There was a shootout loss to the Devils on the 10th. I mean, I know you get a point now, but anyway. Alex Daugherty of OnTheForecheck.com. I guess when we come back next time, I can discuss with you my thoughts on, I'd rather them go right to the shootout after 60. There's something. But we can talk about that some other time. Thanks for joining us. We'll check out the Predators this weekend. Tri-City Sports Now coming back. Some final thoughts. And, a comment from a basketball coach. Do millennials watch college basketball? All right. Thanks for staying with me.